The Single Mom Success Podcast, Episode 11. Heather Wells and the Single Mom blog present Single Mom Success, the place for single moms to find support, inspiration, and the path to their own success. Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's Single Mom Success Podcast. I hope you are having a fantastic week so far. I do apologize for there not being a podcast episode last week, and this one is a little bit late. Recently, my family and I received some very sad news. A young lady that we had known for a good portion of her life passed away. She passed away at the age of 21. She was very young, and so it hit me really, really hard. I had known this young lady since she was only a little bit older than my daughter is now, and watched her grow up, watched her go through, her teenage years, and a lot of drama, a lot of issues surrounding her family. And without getting into too many details, but her mother and I were very good friends at the time, and we spent a lot of time together. We would go, my family would go to her house, we'd have barbecues, her family would come to my house, we'd go to the pool. It was great. And then a lot of bad things happened. Her mother and her stepfather started using drugs, and everything kind of went downhill from there for her and her brothers. Because of all the issues and the drama that went around that, I had to separate myself from that woman, and unfortunately that meant that I had to separate myself from the kids. And very shortly after she and I stopped being friends and I had left, we had been living together at the time, my friend and I guess things got really bad for this young lady and her brothers, and it breaks my heart because I think back now and I really wish that, I'd been able to take them with me or something. I was really hoping that losing friends and losing things, they were losing their cars and their home, and that maybe that would get her to realize how badly, she was ruining her life. And ultimately she did lose her kids. They were taken from her. And unfortunately the system did not really do a lot to help this young lady, and she ended up, she was sort of the stereotypical young lady of, I'm not getting love where I want to get love, so I'm going to try and find it wherever I can. And she ended up pregnant at, I think 14 or 15, had a baby, and ended up ultimately having her, giving away her rights to her child. And I think she just had too much trauma and too much neglect and abuse in her life, and unfortunately it was something that I never really knew how bad it was. I never really knew how bad it was for her or her brothers. It was always hidden from me. I didn't even realize how bad my friend was, into drugs until all of this came out, and it ended up to be a really, really bad situation. And this young lady, she was so bright and so amazing. I was really hoping that she was going to be able to come out of the situation and make it. I thought, God, if anybody can do it, she can, because she's stubborn. She was really stubborn, and I thought, God, she would be able to rise above everything that had happened to her. And unfortunately she wasn't. She ended up becoming an addict herself and passed away from an overdose on the 16th. And so, this week's podcast it's very sad for me, and it's very hard. I thought to myself, God, I need to come up with a fun topic. I need to come up with something, light. And unfortunately, I'm I'm not feeling that way right now. I'm not feeling light. I'm not feeling, peppy. So I think this podcast is mainly going to be about, making sure that your children feel loved and secure, and that they can come to you with anything. I think that that's really important. I've always made it a point to make sure that my children every day know how much they're loved, how much I love them, and when we have problems and we have issues and, we're upset with each other, or we're frustrated with each other, or, somebody gets in trouble and I'm angry, no matter what, at the end of it, there's still always the, I love you. No matter how upset I get or how frustrated I get or how angry I get, you are loved. And the reason I get frustrated, or the reason that I get angry, or the reason that these rules are in place is because I care about you, because I want you to understand the things that, are good, the things that are bad, the things that you should do, the things that you shouldn't do. I'm trying to ensure that you grow up with a good sense of, you have a good moral compass, and that you understand how important it is to, support each other and be there for each other, how important your brother is to you, no matter how angry he makes you or how pissed off you get, no matter how annoying your little sister is, how important she is, because, you could lose them at any moment. And when I was at the service, I saw this young lady's younger brothers, and it's been several years since we've seen them because they had been in the system, and we tried to reach out, we tried to talk to them to see if it was possible for us to see them. If I could have taken them in, I would have, but as a single mom with 3 kids of my own and not a very large house, adding 2 more kids in, I don't know if that would have even been possible for social services to consider. But if I could have, I would have. If I could have taken them, I would have, in a second, in a heartbeat, I would have taken them. But they had grown so much. One of them was, he was huge. He was humongous and almost an adult now, And it was hard to see them having to say goodbye to their sister, They had been separated from her because of what had happened, and I don't know how often they were allowed to see her. I don't know if she was allowed to see them, battling addiction herself. But they lost her. They'll never get a chance to reunite with her. They'll never get a chance to see her again. And so coming home from that, it was even more important for me to stress for my children how important, no matter how much they annoy each other, how important their siblings are, how important your brother is to you and how important your sister is to you. No matter how pissed off they make you, or how frustrated you get with them, or how much you just don't want them to be hanging around because they're driving you crazy, it's still so important to know that they love you, that you love them, and to be supportive, to be that, supportive force in their lives. So, I definitely want to encourage that in my kids and want to make sure that they feel that and that they know that, because it is really important. And then again, making sure that they feel loved and know that they're loved and know that they can come to me, because I think one of the things that breaks my heart the most about what happened with these kids is they felt like they couldn't talk to anybody. They couldn't tell anybody what was going on, and I wish they had said something to me so that I had known how bad it was getting for them, because I didn't. I had no clue what was going on, and I still feel guilt for that. Unfortunately, I know that, somewhere in the logical part of me, I know that I shouldn't, because there was no way for me to know. I mean, my problem has always been that I see the best in people. I try to see the good in everybody, and oftentimes because of that, I ignore the bad, or I marginalize the bad. And, my friend was telling me, no, I'm not using, no, everything's fine. Until the point where I could no longer deny it, and everybody was like, no, she's lying, this is what's going on. And that's when I had to separate. I said, I'm sorry, but I'll be there for you as your friend and support you if you want to get clean, but I can't be here and be your friend while you're using. I have children that I have to consider and I have to care for, and I can't have an addict in my life at all. And it was hard. It was really hard. So it seems like this weekend and this week, not only was I mourning the loss of this young lady, but when I was looking for pictures of her and pictures of her with my kids and her little brothers and stuff for her memorial service, I came across all these pictures of her mother and I, at birthday parties and Halloween and Christmas and camping trips and all the things that we used to do together and the fun. And it made me even more sad because I was mourning the loss of this young lady, but then also having to mourn the loss of my friendship again. Because the person that was in those pictures, the person that was there with me, is not the same person who lost her kids. So I lost a friend and a sister because I considered her a sister. So it was very, very difficult. And so I thought to myself, with this podcast, it's pretty morose, and I'm sorry. It's definitely a sad thing, but I think that I just wanted to emphasize how important it is to just make sure that you have that relationship, even if you have to come to it kicking and screaming. Like, I know that as my boys get older, now that they're teens, our relationship is changing, right? As it should. They get older, and now it's like, Mom, they don't necessarily want, to do things with me. They want to be able to start going out and doing things with their friends. And I know that my daughter is definitely going to have that. She's more like her mother than I would like to admit, and she's definitely going to be stubborn, and she's definitely going to be very, very opinionated. She already is, which I love but hate at the same time. And I'm sure some of you have children like that, where you're like, yes, I want my child to grow up and be the strong, independent, with their own thoughts, and really just, I really want that for my child. They should be that way. But then when it comes to, okay, I want you to be strong and independent and a free thinker, but you still have to follow the rules, and then that becomes the clash, right? And so I'm hoping that, as she gets older, that we will develop a relationship where no matter what, we will still have the ability to talk. And I think that's what's so important, and that's what this podcast is really centralized around, because I saw this young lady feel like she had nobody. And it wasn't true. She had lots of people who cared for her that she could have come to, but I think because it wasn't the person that she wanted the most to be there for her, because it wasn't her mother, it wasn't the same. And that's really hard. I think that realizing that her mother chose drugs and men and a certain life over her was something that just scarred her too much. And I can only imagine the effect that would have on someone and their self-worth and how they felt about themselves and how they felt about others. How would they possibly reach out and open themselves up to anybody if their own mother won't be there for them? And that's hard to imagine. So, despite how stubborn my daughter can be and how strong-minded and opinionated at the ripe old age of almost 8, I still want to instill that knowledge that she can talk to me about anything, that she can come to me, and that even if, and for my sons as well, that even if it's not good, even if it's something that I might get angry about, people get angry, right? I may be angry, I may be frustrated, I may be upset, it may make me sad, but I still want them to feel like they can come to me with it, because once I feel what I need to feel, being angry, frustrated, upset, okay, now let's work the problem. Let's figure out what we can do. What, you got in trouble at school for something. Okay, I'm angry about that. There's going to be consequences for that. What do we need to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What caused it to happen? What made you do what you did, right? Let's work through that. Let's figure out what we can learn from this, right? Even though there's consequences, even though you're going to be in trouble, we still are going to work the problem. We're still going to figure out how to deal with it. And part of dealing with it is that, I'm going to be angry for a minute. For example, my son this past year, or not this past year, last year, he needed a new pair of glasses. Got him a new pair. Money was really good, so he got to pick out a nice fancy frame, and it was really light. He looked very handsome in them. I think we ended up spending like about $200 on the exam and the glasses, and he wore them to school. He had it was like the last day of school, so they went to the amusement park for the day. The amusement park has a water park, and my son, when I went to go pick them up from the school, he walked off of the bus without his glasses on. And I said, "Where are your glasses?" And he goes, "I don't know." He had them a single day, and he lost them at an amusement park, of all places where they would, amusement parks are the places where things go to like die. If you lose something there, the odds of you getting it back are slim to none. So the very day after he got brand new expensive glasses, he lost them, and I was livid. I was so angry. And he knew I was going to be angry. That's why I could tell when he got off the bus. And the whole time he's like, I'm sorry. And then we get home, and I open up his backpack, and I'm like, maybe he didn't lose them. Maybe he just put them in a pocket and he forgot. And so I open up his backpack, and I'm like, son, where's your towel? Where's your brand new swim trunks we just got you? I forgot those too. So, glasses, swim trunk, towel. Now, mind you, at this point, I'm even more angry. And then I open up the front pouch, and there are the little clip-on sunglasses that I had bought him for his brand new glasses, so that he could have sunglasses. I said, son, your sunglass things are here. Why aren't your glasses? He goes, well, I put them in there because I was afraid I was going to lose them. And at that point, my anger and frustration reached an all-new high, and I quite literally looked at my son. I said, you need to get out of my sight right now because I'm so angry with you. And now it's funny, and he still hates me telling the story about it, but, now I can go back and laugh about it because, it's in the past. But even after that, after the yelling and the screaming and the frustration and being really, really angry about that, because, it was a lot of money to just lose in a day. I still made sure, that he knew that I loved him. We talked, and I went downstairs, and I said, look, you know why I'm frustrated. You know why I'm angry. And, I'm going to be angry. I have every reason and right to be angry over losing your brand new pair of sunglasses. Glasses. But I still love you, and I'm going to be angry for a little bit, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean that you're not going to still get another pair. Granted, they're going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than the last ones you got. But, I still always want to make sure that they know. And it's something that my father really instilled in me, because that's how it was with my dad. No matter how angry he got, and he got really angry with me lots of different times, he would walk away. He would be really, really angry. He would yell or whatever. The worst part was when he got really quiet. That's when I knew that I had seriously, seriously screwed up, and that my father was just so angry he couldn't form words, right? Like, I knew that he was that mad. And so when my dad got really quiet, it was worse, because it was like, the man's gonna snap. Like, he might lose it, and I might not survive. That's how mad he is right now. And he's so angry that he quite literally can't form a sentence because he's that mad. And so there were lots of times that those instances happened, and there are a lot of times that I frustrated him. There's a lot of times I pushed buttons. There are a lot of times that my stepmother and I did not get along, and my poor father was always caught in the middle. And he was always having to deal with it. But no matter what, when everything was said and done, there was always the conversation afterwards of, no matter how angry I am with you, or no matter what is going on, I love you. Always know that. You're still in trouble, you're still grounded, you still have this punishment, but I love you. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right? And even though it wasn't what I wanted to hear, it was still something I needed to hear. Right? And that's something that stuck with me my whole life. That knowledge that no matter how angry I am, there was always this discussion that's going to happen with my kids of, no matter what, you are loved. I love you. And I think that that's really important. And I've always thought it was important, but this weekend, going to the funeral of this young lady who, she had a life that she wasn't supposed to have, that no child should have. And unfortunately, she was just not able to get past it. But I know that what she wanted more than anything was to be loved, and she spent her whole life trying to find it. Her whole life trying to find it. And I don't think she ever did. Not really. Not the way she wanted. And I can imagine that must be hard to the one person who's supposed to love you unconditionally and put your welfare and your well-being and your emotional, just everything. The person who's supposed to put you before themselves is your mother or your father. Like, that's the deal we make when we have kids, right? The second that baby is born and you hold your child, you're like, okay, you are now the most important thing. It's not about me anymore. It's about you. And while, I've had many discussions and I've written many things about how it is important to make sure that you do take time for you and you take care of you, because yes, that is important. If the mom is run down, then the whole thing doesn't work, right? It's important that you take care of you. But that doesn't mean that you're putting yourself before your children. It means that you're making sure that you're the best version of yourself for your children, right? There's a difference. There's a difference between being selfish and putting men before your children, putting drugs before your children, putting drinking before your children, putting money before your children, those types of things, where it's costing you the relationship with your children. There's a difference between that and making sure that you're healthy inside and out so that you can be a better parent for your child, right? There's a big difference between that and being selfish. And this woman, she put everything in front of her kids, everything before them, and I watched how it tore up her children. And unfortunately, towards the end, a lot of people tried to step in and help and save her, and not one of them was the person who should have stepped in to save her. And I think that as much as she appreciated what people tried to do for her, it was never going to be the same as your mother saying, I'm sorry that I did this and I'm here for you. And that just never happened. Or if it did happen, it was too little, too late. She had already lost. She was lost. And I don't ever want that to happen for my children. I don't want them to ever feel like they don't have the support that they should have. I don't want them to ever feel like they can't come to me with something. And that's how my life was. I grew up with a father who told me straight up, tell me, I want to know everything. And I may not like it. It may make me angry. You may get in trouble. But you need to know that you can come to me. And whether you get in trouble or not, that means that I care about you and what happens to you. And I didn't really understand it when I was younger. I didn't totally get it. I thought, God, I've got the most controlling and overprotective father ever. But, to be perfectly honest, while I do think he could have maybe let up on the reins a little bit, and, he even admits to it now, but, I gotta give the man credit. He was probably terrified, right? He was a single dad of a teenage daughter. I came to live with my dad when I was like 8, and he had to have been just absolutely terrified, like, what am I doing, right? And, I was a daddy's girl, so of course he was going to be super protective of me. And I think back to it now, and I'm like, okay, it makes sense now. He, was totally wanted to protect me and keep me safe, right? Because I was his little girl, and I get that. So yeah, I think there probably could have been a lot of experiences that I could have had. And there were definitely some experiences that I did have that my father knew nothing about, right? Which is typical for, teenagers and kids, or at least I think he didn't know anything about. He might have known. He's really good at what he did. But I'm thankful now that I had that. I had friends in high school that were just a mess. They were a mess, and they were using drugs when I was in high school. And I had some friends that were, using harder drugs in high school. And I had friends that were, on the precipice of, being in a gang when gangs really started kind of popping out and becoming a huge thing. And it didn't necessarily make them bad people, but there were some friends that, had really miserable home lives. And I remember that they had families that were just like, they didn't care what they did, right? As long as they came home at some point, right? They're like, whatever, don't your parents, don't you have to go check with your parents? My parents don't care. They don't even know when I come and go. I'm like, seriously? My dad's like, why weren't you here? You were supposed to be here 5 minutes ago, right? My dad's on the clock. Where were you? Who were you with? Right? And back then I was like, man, dude, cut me some slack, right? But now I realize how important that was, because even though I saw it as being overprotective, as a parent now, I see it as he was trying to make sure that I was safe, and that I knew that there was somebody at home that actually gave a crap about where I was and who I was with and what I was doing. And while it may have seemed stifling to me at the time, I still felt comfort in that too. When I saw that I had friends whose parents could care less whether they came or, whether they were there or not, it was nice to know that I had somebody that did care, that was paying attention, and that my things, the things that I did and the things I was doing or the things that I didn't do, were important, good or bad. And so I want to make sure that my kids have that too. And I'm definitely protective of my kids, especially after, potentially almost losing one, almost having a child pass away. It makes you super hypervigilant, very hypervigilant. So I get really protective of my kids because I don't ever want to experience that feeling of loss or almost loss again. It was heartbreaking, and it felt like somebody was ripping my heart out of my chest. And I don't ever want that to happen again. So I'm definitely protective of my kids, but, and that'll probably be another podcast of, how do I let go? Because I'm reaching that point with my boys where I have to start examining that and working on that and giving them that space to go and hang with their friends and trust that they're going to make good decisions. And that's hard. It's very hard. So I guess this podcast is again, it was definitely very, not as happy as some of my other podcasts and not as lighthearted, but definitely I think important. I think it's very important that kids feel that sense of security and that love and that knowledge that, no matter what, I will be there for you. I will love you and I will support you. And even if I'm angry with you, I'm still there. You still got me, because I've seen how devastating it can be when they don't feel like that. And it was one of the hardest things I've had to do in a really long time, is go to that funeral yesterday and see a video of all these pictures of this beautiful young lady who only got to be a part of this world for 21 short years. And she should have had so much more. And she should have had a lot better life than what she did. And it was sad to know that she couldn't find the happiness that she deserved. So, I hope this podcast was helpful in some way. If you know of anyone or are currently struggling with any kind of addiction, I encourage you to get help for yourself, get help for them. It is so difficult to see how addiction can just rip apart a life. And not just one life, but many lives. I mean, if there's one thing that I have learned, is that you never know how many lives you touch. And even if you feel alone, I mean, she felt really, really alone, and her service was filled with people who cared about her and were devastated that she was gone. And I don't think she realized how many lives she touched. Good or bad. No matter what was going on with her, I don't think she realized how many people truly cared for her. And how devastated everyone was that we lost her. That we lost her to that addiction. So, I encourage you, if you need help, to get help that you need. If you know someone who needs help, please, be there and support them and help them get the help that they need if you can. It's definitely an important thing. And I understand, like I said, I had to walk away from my friend because I offered the help, I offered the support, and she wouldn't even admit to me that she had a problem. And you can't help somebody who doesn't want help. You can't help somebody who won't admit that they have a problem. So I know that it's hard. But if you or someone you know does need help, on this post in the Single Mom blog, where this podcast is, you can find the link for the abuse hotline and places where you can go to get help if you need it. And I encourage you to do it if you do, or pass it on to people that you know that do need help, because it is very important, and it's amazing how many lives are torn apart by it. So, definitely not my happiest podcast, but I felt it was something that was really important, and I definitely needed to get it out. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I encourage you to please do so at iTunes. You can subscribe there. There's also a link on the sidebar of our website to subscribe to the podcast. And if you haven't visited thesinglemomblog.com, please do so. We have a lot of articles. There's a lot of other podcasts, other things that we talk about. definitely would love to see you there. Take care and have a wonderful week. You've been listening to the Single Mom Podcast, the place to go for support, encouragement, and maybe a few laughs along the way. Please also make sure you head on over to the Single Mom blog for more great stuff for single moms. We have resources, free things to print out, great articles. Can't wait to see you there. Be sure to leave feedback and comments because we love hearing from other single moms. And if you like this podcast, please be sure to subscribe.